Imagine stepping off a plane where the world suddenly feels muted. The air in Pyongyang carries no chaos, no chatter, no hum of commerce or advertising. It's a silence that doesn't comfort, it commands. You're guided down the aircraft steps, past smiling officials in perfectly pressed uniforms, into a terminal that feels both immaculate and frozen in time. Every movement you make is watched, yet no one seems to look directly at you. The light is sterile and even your shadow feels inspected. This is North Korea's capital, a place that only exists for a chosen few to witness, under conditions they'll never truly control. Before you even arrive, your trip is pre-written. You are not a visitor. You are a character in a script crafted by a government obsessed with image. The tour begins months earlier, through a series of permissions, background checks, and payments that pass through invisible channels. You are told where you will sleep, what you will eat, and when you will breathe in the city air. The company that arranges your visit is not a company at all, but a proxy of the state. Its cheerful representatives are trained not as guides but as guardians of perception. They're the smiling face of control, choreographers in a theater that never admits it's a stage. When the doors of the airport open, you're greeted by two guides. They're always two, never one, never three. It's not about hospitality, it's about supervision. One walks ahead, one follows behind. They're with you from sunrise to midnight, and even while you sleep, they're likely not far. Their smiles are steady, their English polished, their tone reassuring. But behind that calm surface is the unspoken truth. They are responsible for you and for what you might see. If you wander, they fail. If you ask the wrong question, they fail. And failure here is not measured in refunds, it's measured in fear. The bus that collects you looks Western, painted with bright colors and slogans of unity, but the interior feels clinical. The driver rarely speaks. As you move through Pyongyang's broad avenues, your guides narrate a version of history that never existed. The great leader built this. The dear leader designed that. The rhythm of their speech is rehearsed word for word. Every sentence leads to praise. You nod politely, but your eyes drift outside the window, to streets nearly empty, to monuments that seem to exist for no one. The architecture is massive, but the people are scarce. It's as if the entire city was built for ghosts. The first shock is how clean it all appears. Streets swept to perfection. No litter, no graffiti, no visible poverty. You see citizens in crisp clothing walking in formation, faces calm, almost too calm. There are no spontaneous gestures, no laughter echoing across the park. Everything feels orchestrated. Even the trees, planted in perfect symmetry, seem to obey. It's beauty without freedom, and it's unsettling. You sense that beneath this order lies something unspoken, something trembling. Then the guide points to a towering statue, the Mansu Hill Grand Monument. Two bronze figures of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il towering over you like gods of steel. The bus stops, and you are told to disembark. You must bow. It's not optional. Cameras are everywhere. But the real surveillance is human. The eyes of the guides, the soldiers, the silent civilians who stand watching. You bow. And in that moment you understand that this isn't tourism. It's performance. And every tourist who bows becomes part of the script, a participant in the illusion. The tour proceeds with military precision. You are shown the Pyongyang metro, clean, deep underground, decorated with mosaics of smiling workers and sunrises symbolizing the eternal dawn of socialism. It's beautiful in a way, but suspiciously empty. Only a handful of locals board and disembark, as if rehearsed. You notice that every time your train arrives, the same people seem to be waiting. You begin to wonder, are they commuters or actors? Your guide's smile doesn't break. You don't ask. You just observe. At mealtime, you're led into restaurants that exist only for you. There are no signs outside, no locals eating, no scent of street food or sound of conversation. Inside, young women in traditional hanbok dresses bring carefully arranged dishes, kimchi, rice, soup, meat, but the portions are small, the flavors muted. You notice that the waitresses move with identical gestures, their smiles synchronized, their eyes void of spontaneity. If you look too long, they lower their gaze. You want to ask where they live, what they dream of, but the air tells you not to. Questions are dangerous currency here. Your hotel, the Yangakdo International, stands on an island, literally isolated from the rest of the city by water. You cannot leave the premises alone. From your window, Pyongyang looks still, almost painted. The city lights are sparse, the skyline dim. Beyond the river there is darkness, whole districts invisible from view. You feel the weight of distance, not physical but moral. The guides tell you the city sleeps early, that it's peaceful, disciplined. You nod again, but your instincts whisper something else. In the hotel lobby, you see a small shop selling North Korean souvenirs, pins of the leaders, flags, books of quotes. The shelves are perfectly stocked, but no one buys. Behind the counter, a young clerk stands motionless, her expression carved from duty. There's a bar that serves imported beer and a bowling alley few use. The elevator sometimes stops on floors not listed on the panel. You're told not to worry, but every creak feels deliberate. Somewhere behind those walls, men in uniforms are watching. At night you turn on the television. Every channel plays the same content, songs of praise, documentaries about military power, broadcasts of the leader visiting factories. The tone is identical across every frame. Devotion, strength, eternity. There are no news anchors, no debates, no unpredictability. It's a theater of obedience. You switch it off. The silence feels heavier than the propaganda. The next morning, the guides meet you in the lobby. Their demeanor hasn't changed. They greet you with warmth, their politeness mechanical. You ask simple questions, how long they've worked, if they have families, if they've traveled abroad. They smile, but their answers are evasive. We love our work. We serve our country. And you notice how every answer loops back to loyalty. It's as if personality itself is forbidden. The bus moves again, passing through grand boulevards and statues. You see children in uniforms rehearsing for parades, their movements identical. It's mesmerizing yet chilling. Schools are shown as showcases of discipline, students reciting poems about the leader, classrooms adorned with portraits, even math problems framed as political lessons. If Kim Jong-il built 3 factories and Kim Il-sung built 5, you realize education here isn't about knowledge, it's about shaping thought. Your guide gestures to a large structure, the Arch of Triumph. It's taller than the one in Paris, they tell you proudly. Everything in Pyongyang must surpass something foreign, as if size can replace freedom. The streets around it are nearly empty. You see a few people on bicycles, their faces unreadable. You try to wave, but most look away. Interaction between locals and foreigners is restricted. To them, you're not a person, you're a risk. As the tour continues, you begin to understand the rhythm of deception. Every location is designed for impression. The libraries, museums, and monuments all carry the same scent of curated perfection. Nothing feels lived in. Every smile is cautious, every movement monitored. And yet, amid the rigidity, you feel the pulse of something tragic, the quiet dignity of people surviving inside an illusion. One afternoon, you're taken to a typical Pyongyang apartment. The guide knocks, and a family welcomes you warmly. The room is spotless, decorated with portraits of the leaders, the television tuned to the state channel. The father speaks proudly about his job, the mother about her children's education. Everything seems rehearsed. You notice the refrigerator humming, though the power grid outside is unreliable. There's fruit on the table, an abundance that doesn't match the country's reputation for scarcity. You realize this home isn't typical. It's a set. The family might not even live here. But they smile, and for a moment you smile too. It's easier to play along than to break the spell. At night you walk to the hotel's top floor for a drink. From the bar you can see across the city, the dim glow of streetlights, the faint movement of cars, the black void beyond. There's beauty in the emptiness. The bartender pours your glass without a word. You ask if he's from Pyongyang, and he hesitates before nodding. You ask if he likes working here, and he says softly, "It's good work." His eyes say otherwise. The guides join you again the next morning, always punctual, always composed. They tell you today's itinerary includes the victorious Fatherland Liberation War Museum, the birthplace of Kim Il-sung, and the Yuche Tower. You nod, But your curiosity begins to shift. It's no longer about what you'll see. It's about what you won't. You start to notice patterns. The bus never turns down certain streets. The schedule never includes markets, hospitals, or ordinary homes. You never see anyone begging. Never see old men talking on corners. Never see the randomness that defines human life. The city feels like a film set designed to convince an audience that perfection exists. Sometimes, between sights, the bus passes small groups of people waiting by the roadside. Farmers, women carrying baskets, soldiers standing at attention. Their faces are distant, sun-worn, unguarded. You wonder if they see you as an intruder or a fool. The guides never comment on them. The driver never slows down. It's as if the real North Korea lies just outside the frame, invisible yet omnipresent. At a cultural performance, you watch dancers twirl beneath banners praising the revolution. Their precision is stunning, their passion convincing. But you can't shake the thought that none of them chose to be here. Applause feels hollow. You clap anyway, blending into the illusion, because defiance would not only endanger you, it could endanger them. That night, back in your room, you find a strange sense of peace mixed with unease. The city outside your window is silent again, the kind of silence that presses on your chest. You think about the people you saw, the guides who never rest, the families who smile under portraits of men they never met. You realize that every approved trip to Pyongyang isn't about seeing North Korea, it's about being seen by it. And then it hits you. Tourism here isn't observation. It's surveillance disguised as hospitality. You are not the watcher, you are the watched. Still, there's a part of you that wants to believe the surface. The order, the cleanliness, the harmony. It's seductive. It whispers a dangerous thought. Maybe this system works. Maybe these people are happy. But as soon as that thought forms, it's shadowed by the truth you've begun to sense in the corners, in the brief unguarded glances, in the cracks of silence that the guides can't control. The truth that behind every smile lies fear, and behind every streetlight, darkness. As the bus returns to the hotel one last time that evening, you glance out the window and see something you weren't meant to see. A building without lights, figures moving quietly in the dark, a truck pulling away with no license plate. The guides don't notice your gaze. You don't ask. But in that moment, you understand something fundamental. What tourists see in Pyongyang is not the country itself. It's the mask it wears when outsiders are watching. And as the night swallows the city again, you realize the greatest illusion isn't what they show you. It's what they make you believe you discovered on your own. The next morning begins like all the others, an early wake-up call. A polite knock on the door, the steady voice of your guide reminding you of the day's program. The word is always the same, never itinerary, never schedule. Program. It sounds harmless, but by now you understand its real meaning. It's not a plan, it's a script. You are an actor again, stepping into a show where every line is predetermined and every gesture is monitored for accuracy. Outside, the light over Pyongyang feels artificial. The city seems trapped between dawn and dusk, as if it resists the idea of full illumination. The bus waits as always, spotless, silent. The driver motionless. You climb in, greeted by the same two guides, their smiles identical, their eyes alert. As the door closes, the sense of confinement returns. You can't shake the thought that this bus isn't just transportation. It's a moving boundary, a capsule separating you from the country itself. The guide's voice breaks the quiet, rehearsing stories about heroic leaders, prosperous citizens, and eternal victories. You've heard it all before, but this time something in her tone changes. You catch a trace of nervousness when she pauses between sentences, glancing toward the front seat where a silent man sits, not part of the group, not wearing a guide's badge. His gaze is fixed on the road, but his presence feels heavier than the asphalt beneath you. You realize he's not a driver. He's a minder, a watcher assigned not just to the tourists, but to the guides themselves. The first stop is a factory. It's introduced as a model of national innovation, an example of how North Korea thrives through self-reliance, the Yuche ideal. Inside, the air smells faintly of oil and metal, but the machines look motionless, untouched. Workers in crisp uniforms stand beside them, waiting. When your group enters, they begin their routine. turning dials, adjusting levers, producing movement without purpose. You see the fear in their eyes, the kind that comes from repetition, not of work, but of performance. You ask your guide how many people are employed here. She smiles. "Many thousands," she says. You look around. There are barely 20. Then she leads you to a display room filled with neatly packaged goods, canned foods, cigarettes, soft drinks. You pick one up. It's dusty. The expiration date passed years ago. No one seems to notice. It's not about the product. It's about the illusion of production. As the bus leaves, the streets widen into empty highways. Billboards show images of soldiers smiling beneath red banners. You notice the same slogans repeated endlessly. "We have nothing to envy. Self-reliance is happiness. Follow the supreme leader's light." The repetition is hypnotic. The city itself has become propaganda. Every wall, every space, every silence. Your next stop is the Pyongyang University of Foreign Studies. The guides present it as a place of learning, progress, and global connection. A few students greet the group, their English fluent but formal. They discuss literature, science, and history with the same rehearsed tone you've begun to recognize. When one student mentions reading Charles Dickens, you ask which book. She pauses, her smile flickers, and she glances at the guide before answering, "Oliver Twist." You ask what she thought of it. She hesitates again, then says, "It shows how happy children are under socialism." You realize she hasn't read it. Later, you walk through the library, shelves upon shelves of identical volumes, all works by or about the Kim family. The air smells of dust and chemicals, like pages that haven't been turned in years. You wonder if anyone ever comes here to read. The silence feels heavier than knowledge. By midday, you're taken to Moranbong Park, where locals are said to gather for leisure. Music plays faintly from loudspeakers. A few families sit on blankets sharing food. You notice how some of them smile genuinely, laughing quietly, away from the guide's line of sight. It's the first time you've seen anything resembling normal life. But the moment feels fragile, like sunlight through smoke. One child waves at you, then is quickly pulled closer by his mother. The guide pretends not to notice. In the distance, you hear a faint siren, long, low, and distant. The guide explains it's a routine test. But you notice the way her hands tighten around her clipboard, the sudden stiffness in her posture. The group is quickly ushered back onto the bus. The driver starts the engine before anyone is seated. As the bus moves away, you glance back. The park empties in seconds, like a tide retreating from an unseen storm. The next site is one of Pyongyang's most famous landmarks, the Juche Tower. The guides speak with reverence, describing it as the heart of the nation's philosophy, self-reliance, human mastery, devotion to leadership. The structure rises like a marble flame against the grey sky, majestic and cold. You're told each brick represents the contribution of one citizen to the revolution. As you stare upward, the enormity of the myth becomes clear. Every part of this country is designed to make the individual feel small, replaceable, and indebted to something they cannot question. Standing there, you hear another group approaching, Chinese tourists, led by different guides, speaking softly. You notice how the North Korean escorts treat them differently, more relaxed, less guarded. Money and politics draw invisible borders, even among the privileged. After the tower, lunch is served in a restaurant overlooking the Taedong River. The view is picturesque, water glistening, bridges arching over calm currents. But across the river, beyond the tourist district, you see neighborhoods that don't appear in brochures. Rows of grey apartment blocks, windows boarded, smoke rising from crude stoves. The guides avoid facing that direction. You realize that what's visible from one side of the river is never meant to be seen from the other. During the meal, the guide begins a speech about the country's unity and progress. Her voice is steady, but her eyes seem distant. Then you notice the man at the corner table, the silent minder again, pretending to eat, his gaze fixed on her. It's subtle, but unmistakable. Her words are not meant for you. They're meant for him. Every sentence is an act of survival. The day's final destination is the victorious Fatherland Liberation War Museum, North Korea's retelling of the Korean War. Inside, dioramas depict American soldiers as monsters, civilians as martyrs, and the Kims as divine saviors. The lighting is dramatic, the music solemn. Your guide's narration turns fervent, almost emotional. "This is how our nation survived imperialist aggression," she says, gesturing toward a mural of fire and triumph. You glance around and realize the emotion isn't pride. It's indoctrination so deep it has become faith. In one hall, a massive rotating panorama depicts the Battle of Taejon, 360 degrees of war, sound, and chaos. You stand in the center as artillery thunders and soldiers scream. It's impressive, cinematic. But what strikes you most is not the art. It's the belief that this war never ended. The guides speak as though it's still happening, as though the country remains under siege. The entire state survives on the myth of eternal threat. Without it, the illusion would collapse. As the group exits, you notice a wall of photographs, captured American equipment, soldiers' helmets, faded maps. Beneath them, a quote reads, "The enemy's arrogance is their weakness." You think about how that sentence could apply to anyone here, including you. That night, back at the Yanggakdo Hotel, you find yourself staring at the ceiling, replaying the day. You think about how much of what you've seen is false, yet meticulously maintained. It's not chaos that sustains this regime, but choreography. Every system of control here operates through rhythm, repetition, and fear disguised as pride. You begin to understand that Pyongyang itself is not a city. It's a living museum built to conceal the truth about the rest of the country. You pour a drink from the minibar and stand by the window again. Across the river, faint lights flicker in buildings that should be dark. Somewhere behind those walls, life unfolds unseen. Hunger, exhaustion, whispered conversations. You imagine the millions outside this city, in rural provinces surviving without electricity, without food, without the luxury of illusion. And you realize the most sinister part of the approved tour isn't the propaganda. It's how it makes you complicit in forgetting them. The next morning, an announcement. "Today we travel outside Pyongyang." The group stirs with curiosity. Finally, a glimpse of the countryside. The guides smile wider than usual, as if this excursion requires extra charm. The bus rolls out of the city, crossing checkpoints manned by soldiers. You notice how the landscape changes. The highways lose their polish, the trees grow wild, the air thickens with dust. Villages appear, modest and quiet. Farmers bend over fields with wooden tools, their clothes worn thin. It's a different world, one that the city pretends doesn't exist. Occasionally, you pass statues of the leaders rising from the earth like guardians of the soil. Each one looks freshly painted, even when the buildings around them crumble. Maintenance of the myth always comes before maintenance of life. At a rural collective farm, you're greeted by workers who wave and smile for the cameras. A woman speaks about the joy of feeding the nation, her voice trembling slightly. You ask how many people work here, and she replies with pride, "As many as needed by the revolution." Her answer is both everything and nothing. Behind her, a row of children sings a patriotic song. Their voices are bright, but their faces are pale, their eyes hollow. You wonder when they last ate properly. Lunch is served again, this time at a guest house by a lake. The food is better than before. Grilled fish, rice, vegetables. You suspect the meal was prepared days in advance, stored for moments like this. You remember hearing stories about villagers being forced to surrender their best produce for visiting delegations. You look at your plate, and guilt tastes stronger than hunger. As you eat, a faint noise catches your attention, static from an old radio in the corner. It's tuned to a local frequency, broadcasting patriotic songs between bursts of interference. But for a few seconds, something breaks through the static. A foreign voice, maybe Chinese, maybe South Korean. The guides react instantly. One rushes to turn it off, laughing nervously. "Old equipment," she says. "It picks up strange signals." The silence that follows is deafening. On the way back to Pyongyang, you notice the contrast growing sharper. The closer you get to the city, the smoother the roads become, the more uniform the people's movements. It's as if you're traveling not through geography, but through levels of control. You realize that the approved trips are not just monitored, they are designed to construct an alternate reality. The tourists who come here leave thinking they've glimpsed the forbidden, but in truth they've been led through a dream built to hide a nightmare. Back at the hotel, the guide thanks the group for their cooperation and discipline. The words sound militaristic, but her smile remains polite. You ask if she ever leaves Pyongyang. She pauses, looks down, then answers softly, "There is no need to. Everything is perfect here." You know she doesn't believe it, but in this country, disbelief is a death sentence. As you prepare for your final day, you realize you've begun to think differently. The propaganda no longer shocks you, it numbs you. You understand that's the point, to wear you down, to make falsehood feel natural, to make silence feel safe. You are beginning to see the machinery not as spectacle, but as a system, one that doesn't merely control behavior, but erases the possibility of thought itself. In that understanding, something darker emerges, the revelation that you too have been controlled. You came seeking truth, but the truth was filtered, packaged, and served with a smile. You've been part of the propaganda you wanted to expose, every photo you took, every word you wrote in your notebook. They all belong to the version of North Korea the regime wants the world to see. You realize now that the most dangerous part of approved trips to Pyongyang isn't the censorship or surveillance. It's how easily even the intelligent, the skeptical, the well-intentioned become instruments of its myth. And as you drift to sleep, you can't help but wonder what else they've shown you, or what they've made sure you never will. The morning begins in a fog that feels almost deliberate. A dense, silver haze drapes over the Taedong River, swallowing the skyline of Pyongyang. The hotel's loudspeakers hum faintly with soft revolutionary music, as if to remind you that even the air here belongs to the regime. When you open the curtains, you can barely see the opposite shore. For a moment, the city feels weightless, detached from the world, a floating dream suspended in control. But deep down, you know what dreams are made of here. Fear. Your guides arrive precisely at 8. Their faces are calm, their voices cheerful. Nothing about their demeanor ever changes. Not their posture, not their smiles, not even the tone of their greetings. You realize this is not mere professionalism, it's survival. They cannot afford emotion. To express fatigue, frustration, or sadness might invite suspicion. To show curiosity, even more. You begin to see the invisible cage that encloses not only you but them. Today's destination is the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun, the mausoleum of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. The guides speak softly now, their words coated in reverence. You must dress properly, one reminds you. Dark trousers, long sleeves. Bowing is mandatory. Cameras are not allowed. The bus drives through streets that have been cleared for the occasion. No pedestrians, no bicycles, no stray dogs. Just soldiers lining the road, their faces stoic, their rifles gleaming in the morning mist. As the palace comes into view, you feel an almost religious tension. It's enormous, made of white marble and surrounded by immaculate gardens. The air feels colder here. You're told to walk in a straight line, to keep your hands by your sides, to stay silent. Inside, you pass through a series of chambers where music plays, slow, mournful, hypnotic. The floors shine like mirrors. Every few meters, attendants in pristine uniforms bow as you walk by. They're not bowing to you, they're bowing to the illusion that governs them. Then comes the moment. You enter the chamber where the body of Kim Il-sung lies under glass, perfectly preserved, bathed in red light. The room is silent except for the hum of the air filtration system. You're instructed to bow 3 times, once at his feet, once at his left side, once at his head. It feels more like ritual than respect. You sense that this act isn't about reverence but obedience, an ancient form of submission repackaged in political sanctity. As you bend forward, you realize you are part of a ceremony designed to erase individuality. Everyone bows together, in perfect unison. The guides watch carefully. A single misstep, a missed bow, an inappropriate expression, could lead to questions, investigations, consequences. Not for you, for them. You begin to understand that every tourist's compliance is a shield protecting their hosts. You play along, not out of fear for yourself, but for the quiet lives orbiting yours. When you exit the palace, the guides look visibly relieved. One of them even exhales softly, as if a weight has been lifted. "Thank you for showing respect," she says. You nod, but you both know what that phrase really means. Thank you for not making me a suspect. The next stop is the Pyongyang Children's Palace, a place presented as a sanctuary of education and talent. As you enter, the air is filled with the sound of instruments, flutes, violins, drums, played by children in perfect harmony. You're shown classrooms where they paint smiling portraits of the leaders, practice gymnastics, and rehearse patriotic songs. Everything is immaculate, every child disciplined, every performance flawless. But their smiles are too wide, their posture too rigid. There's no laughter between notes, no mistakes, no chaos, just precision. You realize this isn't joy. It's devotion engineered into performance. A little girl performs a piano solo with breathtaking skill. When she finishes, the guide claps first, then everyone else follows. The girl bows deeply, eyes shining, but when she looks up, her gaze flickers toward a stern woman in the back of the room, her instructor, or perhaps something more. In that brief moment, the child's expression changes. It's not pride you see, but relief. Relief that she didn't fail. Relief that she won't be punished. You leave the children's palace with a strange heaviness in your chest. You think about how talent here isn't nurtured, it's weaponized. Art doesn't express the soul, it glorifies the system. Music, dance, and even childhood are conscripted into the service of eternal loyalty. You begin to understand that control in North Korea doesn't begin with fear, it begins with love. Manufactured, manipulated love for the leader, replacing the love one might have for family, freedom, or self. The bus takes you deeper into the city, past buildings whose facades are crumbling behind giant banners of prosperity. Your eyes catch glimpses of reality between the cracks. Women washing clothes in buckets, men repairing bicycles with makeshift tools, children carrying buckets of water up stairwells. These are the unscripted moments, the ones your guides hope you won't notice. But once you see them, you can't unsee them. Suddenly the bus slows near a checkpoint. Soldiers inspect the road, speaking quietly into radios. Your guide explains that it's routine security, but her tone wavers. You sense something has happened. The silence inside the bus grows thick. After a few minutes, the guards wave you through, and the journey resumes. But the mood has changed. The guides' smiles are tighter now, their voices quieter. Fear moves through the air like electricity. Later, at lunch, you ask a simple question, perhaps too simple. Do people in Pyongyang ever travel to other countries? The younger guide hesitates, her fork suspended mid-air. Of course not, the older one answers quickly. We have everything we need here. The younger guide lowers her eyes, saying nothing. The conversation ends there, but the silence after speaks volumes. That afternoon, you're taken to a model village outside the capital. It's meant to represent rural happiness under socialism. The fields are green, the houses freshly painted, the farmers smiling. It's perfect. Too perfect. You step inside one of the homes. The shelves are lined with identical jars of pickles, all unopened. The bed is neatly made, the furniture spotless, but the air smells unused, as if no one actually lives here. The guide praises the self-sufficiency of the community. You glance at the horizon and see a cluster of distant huts made of mud and tin. Real homes, real lives, unacknowledged. As the bus drives away, a young soldier stands at the roadside, rifle slung over his shoulder, eyes blank. He watches the bus pass, then turns his gaze toward the mountains. You wonder what he's thinking, if he's thinking at all, or if thought itself has become dangerous. Back in the city, you visit the Kim Il-sung Square. It's vast, symmetrical, overwhelming. The ground is paved so flat it reflects light like glass. Your guide explains how thousands of citizens gather here for military parades, waving flags in perfect rhythm. You can almost hear the echoes, the synchronized stomping, the chanting, the controlled euphoria. It's beautiful in its horror. You imagine standing here during one of those parades, watching a sea of faces move as one. No individuality, no dissent, only choreography, the art form of totalitarianism. In the evening, you're given rare free time at the hotel. You wander the corridors, noticing details you hadn't before, Locked doors without numbers, cameras embedded in corners, staff who appear and vanish without footsteps. You step into the elevator and press a button for a lower floor. The light doesn't turn on. The car descends anyway. When the doors open, the hallway is dark. You glimpse a man in uniform standing near a door, clipboard in hand. He looks at you, startled. You step back and quickly press the button to return to your floor. The doors close, but that brief moment leaves you shaken. Beneath the hotel's polished surface lies another world, unseen and forbidden. That night you can't sleep. You lie in bed, listening. The city outside is silent, yet you hear faint footsteps in the corridor. A distant murmur, the soft click of something metallic. You wonder if someone is listening through the phone on your nightstand, through the lamp, through the air vent. The thought sounds paranoid until you remember where you are. In Pyongyang, paranoia isn't a delusion. It's survival instinct. The next morning the guides appear again, their politeness renewed, but something about their energy feels strained, like actors performing one scene too many. During the ride, you catch the younger guide glancing out the window, lost in thought. For the first time, you see sadness in her eyes, the kind that comes from knowing freedom exists somewhere beyond the horizon, yet will never be hers. You want to ask her what she dreams of, but the words die in your throat. At one point, as the bus stops at a light, you spot something extraordinary, a man running. Not jogging for health, not part of a group, but running with desperate urgency. His coat flaps behind him, his shoes barely hold together. Two soldiers shout from the corner, but the man disappears into an alley. The bus moves on, you look back, the alley is empty. The guides say nothing. The driver's hands tighten on the wheel. You realize you've just seen something forbidden, a glimpse of fear breaking through the surface of order. The rest of the day passes in silence. The tourists are quiet now, too. The novelty has faded. What began as fascination has become unease. You all know, even if no one says it, that you've been witnesses to something profoundly unsettling. Not just oppression, but the perfection of it. A system so complete that it has erased even the concept of rebellion. As the sun sets, the bus crosses a bridge over the Taedong River. The water below glows with the reflection of the city lights, artificial, symmetrical, beautiful. And yet beneath that surface you sense something alive, restless, suffocating. You imagine the people behind those dark windows, families whispering, soldiers standing guard, children reciting lessons by candlelight. You think of how each of them must carry a small flame of awareness, too faint to call rebellion, too dangerous to extinguish. That night you find a note slipped under your hotel door. It's handwritten in shaky English, only 2 words. Be careful. You look around, but the corridor is empty. You'll never know who sent it, a fellow traveler, a guide, a hotel worker, or someone who wanted you to know you were being watched. You tuck it into your pocket and turn off the light. For the first time since arriving, you dream. You dream of a city without sound, of faces with smiles that never change, of rivers that reflect lies more perfectly than truth. You wake before dawn, drenched in sweat, and for a fleeting moment you forget where you are. Then the loudspeaker begins its morning song again, and you remember. In Pyongyang, every morning begins with music and ends with silence. Between those 2 points lies a day where reality bends, truth blurs, and humanity struggles quietly beneath the weight of perfection. And now you understand something you hadn't before. The real prison of North Korea isn't made of walls or guards. It's made of stories, the ones people are forced to tell, and the ones outsiders choose to believe. The final day begins with a stillness that feels almost deliberate, as if Pyongyang itself senses your departure. The air outside is pale, heavy, and silent. From your hotel window you can see the faint outline of the Yucha Tower, standing like an exclamation mark over a city built on whispers. You've begun to notice the rhythm of life here, the synchronization of everything, the absence of randomness. Even the sunrise feels regulated. You are leaving soon, and that makes you dangerous. People who leave can remember. People who remember can talk. The guides are waiting in the lobby, as always, composed and smiling. But there's something different today, an edge of fatigue in their eyes, a subtle sadness they don't bother to hide. The younger one, the one who once hesitated when you asked about travel, avoids your gaze. The older one checks the group's passports again, carefully, as if counting hostages. The bus is already running, engine humming softly, the sound of control disguised as hospitality. Today's destination, they say, is a special cultural experience. The phrase means nothing anymore. Every place you've seen has been a mirror designed to reflect obedience. Still you nod, because nodding is the currency of survival here. The bus glides through the city, past monuments of victory and boulevards of silence. The roads are nearly empty, yet every intersection is guarded. You notice cameras on street lamps, uniformed men pretending to sweep sidewalks. The illusion of cleanliness hides the architecture of surveillance. This city isn't watched, it watches. Then, without warning, the bus turns down a side street you've never taken before. The buildings grow smaller, the streets narrower. The guides exchange quick glances, whispering in Korean. You can sense tension tightening the air. Finally, the bus stops before a large, modern building surrounded by gardens. The sign reads, "Three Revolutions Exhibition." Inside, the halls are cavernous, lined with displays of machinery, technology, and achievements that look like relics from another century. The guides speak proudly of the country's innovations, tractors, turbines, radio systems. But everything is coated in dust. Some of the machines don't even have power cords. You realize this museum isn't about science, it's about mythology. Each exhibit is a monument to a lie, a story that tells the people they are prosperous, that they are ahead, that they are not forgotten. In one room you find a series of glowing maps showing North Korea's supposed technological reach. Satellites, power plants, modern cities. One map marks dozens of airports. You've seen none. Another marks hundreds of factories. You've seen a handful. Yet to question it would be to commit heresy against the narrative. You look at your guide and wonder if she believes what she's saying, or if belief itself has become irrelevant. Later, the group is led into a cinema room where a short film plays, a montage of parades, launches, and smiling workers. The narrator's voice is deep and rhythmic, reciting lines like scripture. Under the benevolent guidance of our supreme leader, the nation advances toward eternal prosperity. The audience, mostly you and a handful of other tourists, sits in silence. You can feel the eyes of the minders in the back of the room, watching not the film, but you. You resist the urge to turn around. When the lights come up, the guide smiles. "We are a proud people," she says softly. And you realize that the pride here is both armor and wound. It protects them from despair, but keeps them from escape. Outside the exhibition hall, the sky has turned grey. You're told that you'll now visit a local market, a rare opportunity, the guide adds, smiling. But when you arrive, you see it's not a market at all. It's a curated stage, stalls filled with products no one touches. Vendors who stare blankly until a camera appears. You pick up an apple, and the woman behind the stand looks terrified, as if you've broken a rule. You put it back gently. Her relief is immediate. You realize she's not selling fruit. She's performing compliance. Beyond the market walls, you catch a glimpse of the real thing. Narrow alleys, people carrying sacks, smoke rising from tin chimneys. The smell of burning coal mixes with the scent of boiled grain. The sound of coughing, distant but constant, drifts through the air. You look back at the guides, but they're watching you too closely. As the bus moves again, you pass a massive government building, faceless, windowless, guarded by soldiers with motionless expressions. Your guide refers to it as a communications center. The younger guide glances down when she says it. You know now what that means. It's a data hub, a listening post, a heartbeat of the regime's invisible network. In this country, communication doesn't connect. It controls. Then something unexpected happens. The bus slows near a tunnel. Ahead, a convoy of black cars passes, escorted by police motorcycles. Your guide instructs everyone to avert their eyes. "For respect," she says, but when you steal a glance, you see the insignia, the red and gold emblem of the Workers' Party. The cars vanish into the tunnel, and for a moment, the city seems to hold its breath. Whoever was inside, you realize, moves through a world none of these people will ever see. Later, you're taken to a hill overlooking Pyongyang. The view is extraordinary. Endless apartment blocks, statues, boulevards, and beyond them, the dark outline of rural emptiness. The guide gestures proudly. Our capital shines as a beacon to all nations, she says. You stare at the horizon and think of what you've seen. The staged families, the fake farms, the painted prosperity. And you realize that Pyongyang doesn't shine. It glows like an ember, beautiful but born of slow, controlled burning. You ask quietly what lies beyond the hills. The guide hesitates, then replies, villages, mountains, loyalty. Her words are fragments of a script, but her voice betrays her. Loyalty to whom? To what? Even she doesn't know anymore. That evening, your group is invited to a farewell banquet. The room is decorated with red banners and portraits of the leaders. The tables are filled with food, meats, fruits, even imported wine. You realize it's a display, not a meal. The abundance here is theater for foreigners. The waitresses smile, pouring drinks you never asked for. The guides raise their glasses. To friendship, one says. To peace, adds the other. The words sound hollow, like echoes of a language that's forgotten its meaning. Halfway through the dinner, the power flickers. The music stops. The lights dim. For a few seconds, the room is silent, except for the sound of breathing. Then the generator kicks in and the lights return. The guides pretend nothing happened, but in those seconds of darkness, the illusion cracked. You saw their faces, stripped of pretense, pale with fear. In that brief silence, you glimpsed the truth. Even they live one power outage away from exposure. After dinner, the tourists are given time to relax in the hotel bar. The mood is uneasy. Some whisper theories, others drink in silence. You overhear one man say he saw movement outside his window last night, a flashlight sweeping the trees. Another says he found his camera's memory card missing from his bag. You all pretend not to care, but everyone knows. Everything you bring here belongs to them, even your memories. You excuse yourself and wander toward the stairwell. The air smells of dust and disinfectant. You descend quietly, one floor then another. On the fourth floor you find a hallway you haven't seen before, unlit, lined with metal doors. From one you hear faint typing. Another emits the low hum of machinery. You step closer. A voice speaks softly from inside, English words distorted through static. They know. Don't speak. The door opens suddenly. A man in uniform stands there, eyes hard. He doesn't speak. You mumble an apology and retreat. When you return to your room, the phone is off the hook. You sit in silence, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what just happened. Was it real or part of the show? In North Korea, even paranoia feels curated. Later, you stand by the window again. The city below is darker than usual. The propaganda billboards glow faintly, but whole districts are without power. Somewhere far away, a single horn sounds, long, low, mournful. You can't tell if it's a factory shift change or a warning. You realize you've reached the point where even sound feels staged. In the distance, you see movement, a faint trail of headlights snaking through the outskirts leading toward the mountains. Trucks, maybe military. You wonder what they carry. Food, people, secrets? You'll never know. And then, almost imperceptibly, the younger guide appears outside the hotel, standing near the river. She's alone, her face illuminated by the faint reflection of the city lights. You watch from above, unseen. She takes something from her pocket, a small photograph, and looks at it for a long time before slipping it back and walking away. That brief, private gesture pierces the fog of performance like a blade. It's the first truly human act you've witnessed here. The next morning, you're told it's time to leave. The guides accompany you to the airport, their smiles restored. The bus crosses the bridge, leaving the city behind. As the skyline fades, you feel the weight of silence settle over the group. No one speaks. Each of you is trapped in your own reflection, unsure what was real and what was theater. At the airport, the process is methodical. Bags are inspected, electronics checked, memory cards handled. You're told to stand aside while an officer reviews your passport. You glance at the guides. They avoid eye contact. You realize that after you leave, they'll be questioned about your behavior, your words, your silences. Your departure is their test. You hope you haven't failed them. When the plane finally takes off, Pyongyang shrinks beneath you, a grid of concrete and silence vanishing into mist. You look down and think of the lives continuing below, the children rehearsing, the farmers bowing, the soldiers watching. You think of the woman by the river, the man running through the alley, the family in the stage department. You realize that none of them chose this, yet all of them sustain it. Not out of belief, but because belief is safer than awareness. As the clouds close around the plane, a thought forms quietly in your mind, one that feels less like realization and more like confession. The world doesn't really want to know the truth about North Korea. It wants mystery, spectacle, darkness it can safely observe from afar. And in that desire, the regime finds its greatest ally. Because if the illusion is what outsiders crave, the illusion is what will survive. At 30,000 feet, the illusion begins to dissolve. Pyongyang disappears beneath the clouds, and for the first time in days, no one is watching you. The guides, the minders, the soldiers, all left behind in a country that hides its wounds beneath marble and light. Yet as you stare out the airplane window, you feel no relief. Only a strange emptiness, like leaving a theater where the actors never get to remove their masks. You came as a witness, but what you witnessed was not the country itself. It was the story it tells to survive. As the jet crosses the Yellow Sea, the hum of the engines becomes your only anchor to reality. You remember the silence of Pyongyang's streets, the way sound itself seemed to obey. You remember the eyes of the guides, polite, loyal, but tired. You remember the hotel's corridors, the static of unseen machines, the notes slipped beneath your door. Each detail feels both vivid and impossible, as if you dreamt a place that shouldn't exist. When you land in Beijing, the contrast hits like a blow. The airport bursts with color and noise, advertisements, laughter, voices overlapping in a dozen languages. People move freely, aimlessly, joyfully. You hadn't realized how much freedom sounds like chaos until you'd lived without it. You find yourself flinching at ordinary things, a man shouting into his phone, a woman arguing over luggage weight, a child crying. These sounds, once meaningless, now feel sacred. You check your phone. For the first time in days, the signal returns. Notifications flood in, messages, news, life. But your fingers hesitate over the screen. How can you describe what you saw without betraying it? How can you translate fear so silent it never raises its voice? There are no photographs of the real North Korea. The lens was always pointed where they wanted it. The truth lies outside the frame, in the shadows you were forbidden to see. That night, back in your hotel in Beijing, you can't sleep. The city outside is alive, horns, music, laughter spilling from open windows. Yet your mind drifts back to Pyongyang's emptiness, to the girl by the river, to the little boy who waved before being pulled away. You wonder if they think of you at all, or if memory itself is a luxury they can't afford. You open your notebook, the one you kept hidden. Pages of careful observations stare back, words written in whispers, thoughts disguised as notes. You read them slowly, realizing they describe a place that may no longer exist by the time you share them. Regimes like this survive not through strength, but through silence. Their greatest victory is to make the world forget. As the night deepens, you begin to write again, not as a journalist, not as a tourist, but as a witness to something beyond borders. You write about the silence that hummed through hotel hallways, about the faces that smiled without joy, about the guides who lived between duty and despair. You write about how fear there is not shouted, but inherited. It seeps into gestures, into posture, into breath. It's not terror that sustains the system, it's fatigue, the exhaustion of pretending forever. And then you write about yourself, about the guilt that followed you onto the plane. Because you bowed when they told you to. You smiled when they smiled. You said thank you when you wanted to ask why. You became part of their performance. You realize that every approved tourist is not just a spectator. They are a participant in the maintenance of illusion. Without them, the theater has no audience. Without the audience, the play collapses. Weeks pass. You return home to comfort and light, to conversations about politics and documentaries and human rights. People ask you what it was like. Some ask with genuine curiosity, others with voyeuristic fascination, as if North Korea were a dark carnival built for Western imagination. Was it scary? They ask. Did they follow you? Did you see anything forbidden? You tell them about the monuments, the empty streets, the bowing ceremonies. You describe the smiles, the stillness, the isolation. You choose your words carefully. But what you don't tell them, what you can't tell them, is that the most haunting thing wasn't what you saw. It was what you felt. The slow erasure of reality. The quiet rewriting of truth. The way a lie, repeated enough times, begins to sound like order. Sometimes, late at night, you catch yourself humming one of the melodies you heard in Pyongyang, one of those cheerful revolutionary songs that filled the mornings. It slips out before you notice, and when you do, you stop. You wonder if that's how it begins for them, the merging of memory and message until you can't tell which is yours anymore. You start reading accounts of defectors, testimonies from people who escaped. Their stories are like shards of glass, sharp, inconsistent, incomplete. One speaks of hunger so deep she forgot her own name. Another recalls singing praises to a leader she knew had killed her father. A third describes her first day in South Korea, overwhelmed by lights, noise, abundance. The same disorientation you felt in Beijing, magnified 1,000-fold. You realize that no single story can capture this place. Each one is a fragment, and even together they can't form the whole. Because North Korea isn't just a nation, it's a machine that manufactures perception. It controls not only what people see, but what they can imagine. Months later, you come across a photograph online, a group of smiling tourists standing before the Mansu Hill statues. Their postures are identical to yours in the photo you took there. You stare at it for a long time. The same bus, the same guides, the same smiles. You wonder if the younger guide is still there, rehearsing the same lines, walking the same routes, bowing to the same monuments. You wonder if she remembers you, or if remembering is forbidden too. The world continues indifferent. New crises arise, new headlines distract. North Korea fades again into the background, a mystery, a meme, a ghost story the world tells itself. And that perhaps is the regime's greatest success, to exist in the margins of attention, both invisible and untouchable. But sometimes, in quiet moments, the memories return with startling clarity. The girl at the piano playing not for joy but for survival. The mother pulling her child away from your wave. The man running through the alley, chased by shadows. The river at night, reflecting a city that doesn't know it's dying. Each image carries a weight you can't release. They follow you, as if demanding remembrance. You realize, slowly, that what you saw in Pyongyang wasn't just a city under dictatorship. It was a reflection of something universal. Humanity's capacity to adapt to cages. How people can find rhythm in repression, grace in obedience, hope in repetition. How they can convince themselves that silence is safety, that loyalty is virtue, that ignorance is peace. You wonder how different you really are from them, because outside in your free world illusions thrive too, built not on fear but on distraction. Here the lights never go out, but sometimes truth does. You begin to question how many of your own freedoms are real, how many are curated performances dressed as choice. Pyongyang, in its terrible honesty, merely mirrors what most societies conceal. That control doesn't always need walls. It only needs belief. One evening you find the note again, the one slipped beneath your door. Be careful. You unfold it and study the shaky handwriting. You imagine the hand that wrote it, trembling, hurried, aware of the risk. You wonder if that person is still alive. You realize that small act of courage and a scrap of paper, a warning written in silence, was perhaps the truest glimpse of freedom you ever saw there. You keep the note, not as proof, not as evidence, but as a reminder, a fragment of humanity smuggled out of a place that tries to erase it. In the years that follow, you continue to speak about what you saw, sometimes to journalists, sometimes to students, sometimes to no one but yourself. The words change each time. You try to describe how the streets felt too wide, how the air felt too still, how the people's smiles were heavy with invisible chains. But you always return to the same realization. That truth in North Korea doesn't live in what's seen. It lives in what's missing. And that perhaps is the hardest thing to convey. The emptiness. Not just the absence of freedom, but the absence of the idea that freedom could exist at all. You begin to understand why the regime allows approved trips to Pyongyang, They are not mistakes, they are strategies. Each tourist who comes returns home convinced they have seen the hidden world, when in reality they've seen its mask. The illusion feeds itself. The lie becomes self-sustaining. Even you, who came with eyes open, leave carrying a version of the story they wanted you to tell. But beneath that story, beneath the marble, beneath the silence, you know there are people still awake in the dark. People who whisper forbidden truths. People who risk everything to imagine a world beyond the leader's portrait. People who still believe in something fragile and unstoppable, the possibility of another morning. And as you stand at your window one dawn, watching light creep over your own city, you think of them, of the woman by the river, of the note, of the silence that followed. You whisper a single promise, not to expose, not to pity, but to remember. Because remembering is the only rebellion left to those who can still speak. You close your eyes and see Pyongyang again, not as it was shown to you, but as it truly is, a city made of mirrors, reflecting the world's indifference. Its monuments gleam like frozen prayers, its streets echo with footsteps that lead nowhere. Yet somewhere within that silence, a heartbeat remains, faint, defiant, human. And you understand finally that the real forbidden place is not North Korea itself. It's the part of the human soul that learns to live without truth and still calls it peace.